Welcome back in on the Cam Show, Rogue Media Sports Network, talking Red Sox, hot stove, off season. No one better to bring in than Nick Diamond of Nick Diamond Media coming in, and he has got this covered from all angles throughout this off season. And really, Nick, what you've been working on is the dream off season for this Red Sox team, and we're going to mainly look at that from the pitching standpoint. Before we get into what that dream rotation is, would you say that number two starter at the minimum is the top priority for this Red Sox team?
I think it was until Alex Bregman opted out. I think Alex Bregman's number one, number two starter is number two now. If they don't sign Alex Bregman, it was a wasted offseason, in my opinion. You got to have that leader. You got to have the third baseman. You have to have him. But
yeah, and I mean,
just the pitcher.
And I mean, just optics wise from Bregman at this point too, right? Like you kind of drove away your franchise player who's playing third base, for better or for worse, because I can see both sides of that. But you did it because you had Bregman coming in, and you saved a bunch of money by trading Rafi Devers. That was really the only good thing, quote unquote, good thing that came from it. So to lose Bregman after 1 year would be terrible. And we kind of saw this pitching staff run out of steam a little bit at the end of the season. You know, obviously they were one of the top ERA teams in the American League the whole year. For 2 months in the summer, Brian Bayo was pitching as well as Garrett Crochet for like a 15 start stretch and didn't quite have it at the end of the season and into the postseason. No Lucas Giolito at all in the postseason. So when we talk about this number two starter, how much, before we get into that, how much more effective do you think Brian Bayo could be in a 3 spot where he's not the day after Garrett Crochet in a playoff series?
To be honest, I think what he posted this season, like a mid 3.33 ERA, is probably his peak. I think if we got a better defense, you might see the ERA come down a little bit, but I think what we got in the swing and miss, that's it for him. I don't think he's going to really grow much more. I think he's a good 3-4 pitcher. I would love to have him as a 3 or 4 guy, but you got to add above him. You can't go into the season with him as the number 2 and expect to be at the top of the division at the end of the year. It's not possible.
And this all gets born out of this great tweet you had this week about what this rotation can be. You want to pull it up here if you could read it here. But you look at what this could be, and it's a bit of a dream scenario. You do say that. It's a bit of a dream here, but there's no reason it can't be Crochet, Ryan, Ranger Suárez, Brian Bayo, and Connolly Early as your 1 through 5. And man, I am here for that. I am here for that 100%. So looking at Joe Ryan, who I think is at the top of most of Red Sox fans' lists, obviously it's a name we heard a lot around the trade deadline. We've already done a ton of research on the guy because of it, but that's going to need to be a trade. You got a couple of these other guys, free agents, kind of a weird free agent market that we'll talk about in a second. But if it's Joe Ryan coming in a trade, what are you willing to part with that Minnesota will want to make a deal for?
Well, I think you have to try to convince them to take one of your outfielders in Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu. I'm not one to believe that the Twins actually want to add a 28-year-old outfielder in Jarren Duran or a 26-year-old outfielder in Wilyer Abreu. I don't think those are what they're looking for. I think they're probably looking for more younger pitching arms like Peyton Tolley or Connolly Early. So I think it's going to be, I think one of those guys has to go, Peyton Tolley or Connolly Early, whichever one the Red Sox are more comfortable with giving up. Connolly Early really impressed me down the stretch, but Peyton Tolley is more, he's got the higher ceiling, I think. And then I think one of your top prospects, I know none of them are actually prospects anymore, but Campbell or Meyer, one of them have to go for them to even consider it. If you put in Meyer, I think right now they probably would want Meyer. I don't think the Twins are in a position to want to pay a prospect $10 million a year like Christian Campbell. I think they're probably going to go in the full rebuild mode. So I think it would have to be prospects in that area. So maybe you'd have to part with Marcelo Meyer or Christian Campbell. I don't think it'd have to be both of them. I don't think it would be as steep as the Garrett Crochet Crochet trade, but I do think the Twins, I think everyone knows the Twins are moving Joe Ryan, so I think you have some leverage there. But I think they're going to require one of those left-handed pitchers, and they're going to have to ask for one of they're no longer prospects, but prospects, big-time prospects.
And looking at the pitching prospects in particular, and we heard these names thrown around, like you mentioned, at the trade deadline, and it's going to come down to Peyton Tolley, Connolly Early. And to be honest with you, Nick, I flip-flop back and forth on this, on who I would rather give up. I really don't want to give up either of them, but if Joe Ryan's in return, like that's kind of the price of doing business. So if you're in Craig Breslow's seat right now and that offer comes to you, which one would you rather part with?
That's a really hard question, but I would probably go Conley early. I just think the fastball on Peyton Tolley is so electric. Then if you can teach him at least one other pitch, he's going to at least have a ceiling or a floor of like a 4 or 5 starter. Conley early, I was really impressed with his swing and miss potential. He throws a lot of pitches, but he doesn't have anything overpowering. He's not the guy who's going to go out there and throw 97 and 99 like Peyton Tolley is going to be able to do consistently. I think there is some sort of concern that if Peyton Tolley doesn't develop an off-speed pitch or a secondary pitch, that he might be a reliever. But I'm willing to take that chance and keep Peyton Tolley in the organization at the moment.
And going off of that, where do you see Peyton Tolley starting 2026? Because I think that's an interesting look at this. It's obviously a very short term look at this, but I think a lot of people can see Connolly early slotting into the back end of the rotation last year. Like you mentioned, there's a lot that needs to be worked on for the secondary pitches for Tolley. That's kind of what happens when you start the year in single A and end the year in the MLB postseason. Those things don't quite come along. So do you see it as a world where Peyton Tolley could be in the starting rotation at the beginning of the season, or is he working on some of these things in Worcester?
If he's in the starting rotation in spring training in April next year, I think there's a mistake made by Craig Breslow and the Red Sox. They didn't go out and do what they were supposed to do to add to this team. So he better be in AAA to start the season. That's how I kind of look at it. He doesn't have the stuff. He doesn't have the secondary stuff to be slotted in as the 4 or 5 guy at the moment. So if we're going with between the two who I want to start in the rotation next year, it'd be Conley early. But if I had to put one of these guys in the trade, I'd probably give up early before Tolley.
Because we're looking beyond that. We are looking beyond April 2026 as much as I'm right there with you. I'd love to see Connolly early in this rotation at the start of the season. But if it means you're not getting Joe Ryan, that stinks. And to what you said in there, if Tolley's in this rotation, then it's a failure. Because I think the way we need to look at it from the rotation standpoint is, yeah, you need a number 2 for sure. But you probably need a number 3 or a number 4 as well. They're probably not going to retain Lucas Giolito. That's probably not the worst thing in the world. So where are you looking for another arm in the middle to back into this rotation? You looking free agency? You looking at maybe someone like a Sandy Alcantara who's still on the trade block? Where are you looking for that?
Well, I don't think the Red Sox have the trade capital to trade for 2 starters anymore.
That's a lot, yeah.
Last season, yes, I think they had the capital, but not anymore. So I think they'll go with the route. They'll trade for a starting pitcher, and then if they go for 2 starting pitchers, they might sign one. But I think they'll probably trade for a starting pitcher and sign a bat. I think that's the way they'll go. But I'm almost rather them just go get 2 starting pitchers and make this rotation elite. I'd rather them just do that. If you think about it, the Yankees are going to bring back Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, and they're going to have 3 or 4 guys for 2 spots at the end. They're going to be elite too. Mm-hmm. The Orioles are not going to be as bad pitching wise. I think it's going to be just as competitive a division next year. Make this rotation elite. Go make a top 3 in the make 3 starters that can go out and win playoff games and you're confident with. I'd be very happy. I think that's more important than going and get the right-handed bat. So if you don't have the trade capital to trade for 2, you have to go out and spend for 1. There's a lot of names out there though that I would be okay with just going to pay for 1.
Yeah, let's look at those. It's kind of a weird free agency pool, but certainly the names at the top are starting to get thrown around here as most of the teams are done playing baseball. So where would you rank like the top 2 or 3, let's say, starting pitchers in the free agency pool this year?
Well, I'm going to skip Framber Valdez because he's going to go into his 32 season, and then he's had some controversy lately. Yeah. So maybe about a month and a half ago, he would have been higher up on this list, but at the moment, he's probably at the bottom. I'm going to go Ranger Suárez as number 1. I'm just a big fan. I know he's a lefty. His postseason, he has the lowest postseason ERA of all time. It's ridiculous that Ranger Suárez is the lowest postseason ERA of all time. And he's getting a little bit underrated with that pitching staff. He's like their 4 guy out there, and he's a stud. Dylan Cease has all the swing and a miss potential in the world. He's entering his age 30 season. He's another option to be okay with. And Michael King as well also has injury history, but his swing and miss potential is unreal. He's also from New England, so that might be a plus. But he's a little bit older, entering his age 31 season. So those are 3 arms I'd be okay with. They all will have a qualifying offer attached. So that's something you would have to talk about. If you go the trade route, Joe Ryan will not. Other options will not have a qualifying offer attached. So, yeah, I mean, maybe the Red Sox will be more okay with giving up one of these picks if they give Lucas Giolito a qualifying offer. That's another topic we could talk about. We'll see.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Because I do want to talk about Ranger Suarez for a bit, but obviously Lucas Giolito, it was a nice season overall, and you knew that there was probably a wall coming after the elbow surgery. It usually comes around 100 innings. He got past that, but definitely the last month of the season, it was pretty bad, and obviously not available for the wild card series. So, is this a guy you're just not even thinking about for this team in the future?
Well, if he didn't get hurt, I think I would have definitely given him the qualifying offer. At the end, if he pitched in the playoffs, I think he would have 100% been like, I'm going to get a 2-3 year deal. Goodbye, qualifying offer. But with that injury, we don't know how significant it really is. He might just snatch it up. Remember last year, Nick Pivetta, I was one that did not want to give Nick Pivetta that qualifying offer. I thought he was going to instantly snag that up and take it. He didn't work out it didn't happen. And he went up and posted a great season in San Diego for them. So maybe that happens to Lucas Giolito. I'm kind of like 50-50 on it right now. I think if they gave him the qualifying offer and then he doesn't take the qualifying offer, I think there's a better chance the Red Sox go out and pay a starting pitcher. I think they really do value that pick.
Yeah.
And if they lose Alex Bregman, they're not getting a comp pick back because they cannot give him the qualifying offer this year. So there's a lot of qualifying offer things you could think about.
Yeah. And looking at Ranger Suárez again, because that's a name that I think in most free agent classes, he really flies under the radar because of what you talked about. He's like the third or fourth guy on that team. Since he's made the move from the bullpen a couple years ago, the numbers just get better every year. He's striking out more guys. He's not a big strikeout guy, but he's striking out more guys. He's walking less guys. Got a real nice hard hit rate. He's lost soft contact off of him. He hasn't necessarily been a huge workhorse yet. I don't think he's hit 160 innings, which was an anxiety you had with Garrett Crochet that obviously turned out to be just fine in year one. But do you think this is a risk of, because of the market, you're going to need to maybe overpay for Ranger Suárez a little bit, or do you just think he's that good?
Well, I think it's a very pitching heavy market. I don't know how people are going to value Ranger Suárez. I know the Red Sox and Craig Breslow have been talking about velocity in the zone. They want this velocity, and Ranger Suárez doesn't have the velocity that Michael King or Dylan Cease has, but there's just something about Ranger Suárez. He goes out there and competes. He's the guy I want. He's going to post. I have no problem with him going out there in the postseason, and he's done that before. I think Ranger Suárez is a perfect 2 to 3 guy to invest in, and I don't think you'd have to give him that 7-8 year deal like you would do Max Fried last year. I think you can settle for a 6 or maybe even a 5 year deal. I don't know, but we'll see. I know it's a pitching heavy class, and then not very much after that besides those top 3 or 4 pitching arms. But yeah, we'll see. I think there's a chance you can get him on a 5 or 6 year deal and not have to go the 7 or 8 absurd years for a guy like that.
Would it be just the perfect scenario then, that like dream scenario where you trade for Joe Ryan and you do have Ranger Suárez still in the middle of that rotation when all it costs you is money?
That would be amazing if you could have those top 3 guys going into a postseason series. I know you're not guaranteed a postseason series, but if you have those top 3 going into the season and then going into a postseason series, I feel really confident with those 3. And then Brian Bayo is your 4 guy. He slots in perfectly as the 4 guy.
Yeah.
Now, if you have to trade a Conley early to get a Joe Ryan, you can worry about the 5 starter later. I'm fine with that. You have the depth to see who can win that spot in spring training. But I think you have to address the 2 spot no matter what.
Yeah. And again, with Connolly early, like we're both liked what we've seen so far. His pitch mixing was great, especially in that playoff game at Yankee Stadium before his defense kind of let him down a little bit. But when I look at Ranger Suárez, I'm thinking that's kind of what we want Connolly early to become. Is that a good read on it anyway?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's pretty close. If Connolly early becomes Ranger Suárez, that's like perfect. That's a great outcome for Conley Early. Conley Early wasn't the highest rated pitching prospect coming into this season. The Red Sox just had all this depth and they ran out of it. So they had to go to him, and he really impressed. So I don't think Ranger Suárez was a top prospect coming into his career. I think they're very similar, big changeup guys. They have like the sweeper, the left-handed. They don't throw 95 plus. They're in that 92 to 94 range. And I think they would be perfect. I think Ranger Suárez would be perfect to slot in there, the 2 or 3 role.
Wanted to ask one about Bregman real quick. Obviously the news still fresh that he's opting out. Not that it's a huge surprise, but you mentioned it earlier. That's got to be priority number one for the Red Sox with what he did before the injury and even a little bit after the injury, but also with how much he helped this team, what he brings to the clubhouse. There's not a lot of winners necessarily in that clubhouse just yet, which is not a nice thing to say, but this dude's an absolute winner. If he's gone and he's gone somewhere else in the American League, how do the Red Sox pivot that situation? Because now you got a pretty, prime infield defensive position that you've got to replace. You just let a Gold Glover go and a right-handed bat in the middle of the order, which is something that you probably needed to improve on anyway, even if you did have Bregman on the team.
Well, what I would do, it would be something different what I think the Red Sox would do. I think Marcelo Meyer just slots in the third base. Okay. I think that's what the Red Sox would do. Maybe they would splurge on a Pete Alonso at first base. Maybe they make up the offense that way. But I would probably not go the Joe Ryan route if Alex Bregman walks and go towards the Reds. And then I would try to get Noelvi Marte in a trade with one of their pitchers. And then I think the Reds would be more interested in a Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu because they need the offense. Whereas the Twins, I think, are going to go more full rebuild.
Can you put a mega package together for Cincinnati for Hunter Green? That's a name that's thrown around now.
I think it's going to be so insane if it's Hunter Green and a Noelvi Marte, where I think you have to put up like your pitcher, your Conley Early or Peyton Tolley, and then I think it's going to be Duran and then Campbell and Meyer. Like I think once you put Hunter Green, who's under contract until 2030, and he's only 26 years old, like he's a stud, and he throws 100. Like this is exactly what the Red Sox are looking for, and he's right-handed. He'll match up perfectly with right behind Garrett Crochet. I think that's a little unreasonable. I think if you go maybe like a Nick Lodolo and a Noelvi Marte, you might be able to get like a Jarren Duran and then a prospect like Luis Perales, maybe. I don't know. I don't know exactly how much they value Noelvi Marte and stuff like that, but I know they're trying to move him off of third base into right field just because they have more infielders and need outfielders. So maybe they give him up for a Jarren Duran or a Wilyer Abreu, and they really value one of our outfielders.
Nick Diamond's got this stuff going up on Twitter all the time. He's throwing out who the Red Sox should be looking for and why. That's what's caught my attention. I think you've got some great takes on there, Nick. Tell people how they can find you and follow along.
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at NDiamondMedia. So just didn't let me spell out Nick. It's too long, but NDiamondMedia. I'm also on TikTok at NDiamondMedia, but not as much. I'll post there maybe once a week or so if I have the time. But yeah, you guys can follow me there. I'll be posting on Twitter as much as I possibly can, though.
And it's going to be a busy offseason for him. Nick, appreciate you taking the time and keeping us briefed on what the Red Sox could possibly be looking for in this offseason. It should be a fun one.
Thanks, Cam. This was fun.
There he goes, Nick Diamond. We will continue on with the Cam Show next. Some reaction on what the Red Sox are going to be looking for in this offseason, specifically on the pitcher's mound. It's coming up next on the Cam Show.